Joining me now, three of my favorite radio talk show hosts: Errol Lewis, WWRL Radio, also a columnist for the New York Daily News, CNN contributor, good guy otherwise as well. John Gambling, WOR Radio. Great to see you, John, and good guy. I don't know why I start that, because now I got to say good guy after each of your names. And out in Kansas City, Missouri, Chris Stigall of KCMO. Chris, good to have you with us. Let's start with a radio talk show host. Rush Limbaugh firing back at Colin Powell over the weekend, saying the Republican Party's not listened to me in the last 2 years, responding to Colin Powell's charges against him. And you might even say the Republican Party's in the situation it's in precisely because of people like Colin Powell and John McCain and others who devised this new definition of the identity of the party, which is responsible for electing Democrats all over the country. Who won, Colin Powell or Rush Limbaugh?
I think it was a draw. If Colin Powell had said it was John Gambling instead of Rush Limbaugh would never have touched it and gone near it. But because it had his name in it, he just ripped it apart.
Yeah, we should point out
ran with it.
Yeah, it also had Sean Hannity's name, also right. Laura Ingraham, going back to a Mort Kondracki column, which I thought was nonsensical as usual on the part of Mort Kondracki, but that was something Colin Powell chose to focus on. What is going on here? The Republican Party, John McCain doesn't seem to get along with anybody. Not his vice presidential candidate, not Colin Powell, who, by the way, put in $2,300, contributed to his campaign, and now has some sort of epiphany.
Listen,
what the heck is the deal?
The numbers are on Colin Powell's side. I mean, this is they took a drubbing in this last election. There's some signs of weakness in some key areas. If you lose in the suburbs, and you lose the women, and you lose the Catholics, and you lose the Latinos, and the blacks, and you lose portions of the South, and portions of the West, and the entire industrial Midwest, and all of New England.
Are you saying the Republican Party, Errol, has a problem here?
Well,
What's your point?
I think they've got a problem.
I don't get it.
I think they've got a problem. And you know, and I think that's really what Powell was getting at.
Yes, the Republican Party's got a problem. The problem is they don't have a leader that can articulate core conservative principles. And I'll tell you something these talk show hosts like Rush and Laura and Sean have that Colin Powell doesn't.
Well, don't overdo it. Don't keep talking about them over and over. I mean,
no. Here's the difference. And me and everybody that hosts a radio show. The difference
John
is we have access.
No, I'm sorry.
We have access to the folks, Lou. We can talk to people. We talk to actual American citizens every day. The best they get are people in tuxes at cocktail parties. I'll take the American people every time.
Well, all right. I think okay, let's take a quick vote. We're going to do that, guys? All right?
Sure.
We'll do
Absolutely.
that. All right. Rod Blagojevich, I love it. Jesse Jackson Jr. is an informant. Says sources close to him, and it's been confirmed or denied. Presumably it's absolutely true. For some years, I mean, this is a twist on the Blagojevich deal. I mean, I love this.
Well, I tell you, this whole story makes no sense to me whatsoever. I don't quite understand what's going on. Why did Fitzgerald pull the plug on this thing when he did, when there hasn't really been a law broken here? There's been horrible ethics involved.
Are you sure of that?
No, I'm not sure, but we haven't seen anything written down. There've been no charges of actually laws being broken. Right. So why did Fitzgerald yank this thing on the day that he did? That's the question I have.
I think part of the reason, John, is that the Tribune went with the story after holding it for months on that Friday. I understand that was part of at least the contributory to that decision. But I'm like you. I don't understand this story. Why all this dancing around with Jesse Jackson Jr.? I mean, he comes on, he's angry in that press conference later. He says that he was expecting to be treated well by Blagojevich, and he's been informing on him for how many years?
The people pursuing Blagojevich have not covered themselves in glory. You know, my sense of Peter Fitzgerald is that he knew that his administration and therefore his job was probably going to go out of, he's going to go out of business in about 6 weeks, and whatever he was going to do, he needed to do it.
So you're saying this was a job retention effort on the part of Patrick Fitzgerald as U.S. Attorney?
I think if he was going to get any juice out of it, either professionally or even politically, he needed to make a move. I mean, the next prosecutor shouldn't get the credit for what he apparently spent years building as a case.
All right, Chris, what do you think of that?
Rod Blagojevich wants to sell a Senate seat, and water is wet. I mean, political patronage is not illegal. It's going on every day. Rod just happens to be on tape, unfortunately. And Errol's absolutely right. This is not uncommon. There's no laws been broken here. And Patrick Fitzgerald fumbled here in a big way, or it is job retention. Why you strike before a deal was even done? That's why he's not resigning. Why should he? What's his crime?
That's exactly my point. I mean, what's going on here? There is no reason for Blagojevich to step down, and he's playing hardball. He's got a little bit of leverage and juice left, and he's going to take it to the nth degree as far as he can possibly run with it.
And watch out, Chicago Democrats, Lou. Have you ever seen a group of people that want to throw somebody overboard so aggressively?
Well, my favorite is Quinn, Chris, the lieutenant governor. I mean, he was out there telling Blagojevich to resign before they had the arrest warrant
and now he's run into the woods. You can't find him.
And keep in mind, these are people that want to give Gitmo detainees trials, but they want to certify Blagojevich as insane and throw him out quick.
Yeah, we'll talk about the insanity defense next year. Blagojevich has been judged by all of Chicago, apparently, fearing some kind of implication to be absolutely nuts. We'll be back with John Gambling and Errol Lewis and Chris Stigall in just one moment. We're back now with Errol Lewis, John Gambling, Chris Stigall. Let me turn first to the order of the day. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid backing Caroline Kennedy. This is official, just in to the Dobbs Tonight Show. What do you think?
I think she's a slam dunk. I think Patterson's going to choose her, and there won't be any second place. I think that for all kinds of reasons. Is she qualified? We could argue that all day long.
Who the heck is there?
It was exactly so. That was going to be my point. I mean, she certainly is qualified as any other two-legged animal in the Senate.
That's pretty restrictive consideration. Chris Stigall, what do you think?
That wasn't sexist, was it?
No, that was
two-legged.
Sexist,
okay, I just want to be clear. No, listen, it's great to have a lineage. It's great to have a great last name, and Kennedy certainly is a great political last name. And, you know, if Ted Kennedy's leaving, we got to keep a Kennedy in there, don't we, Lou?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking that it might be, I really believe this. I think it might be more appropriate, considering the only African-American leaving the Senate is, of course, Barack Obama, and David Patterson, the first African-American governor. If I were him, I have to be honest with you, and as a person who appreciates diversity, I think I really personally believe he ought to appoint a minority.
He's thought about it. It's certainly been brought to his attention, to say the least, but he also has to run for re-election. And so he's got a lot of considerations, like who can raise the most money. It does happen here, just like in Illinois. Who's going to be his running mate?
Not in New York.
It's been known to happen. It's a big state. 19 million people.
How vocal were the New York women about the Hillary versus Obama fight? There are some New York women that are pretty darn mad about the way Hillary was treated. They'd like to see that woman have some respect, I think. You talk about the minority candidate. Obama certainly had his day.
The Clintons aren't all that happy about the Kennedys right now.
I don't know.
I certainly think that David Patterson would love to have on the bumper sticker in 2010 Kennedy and Patterson.
There you go.
And I think that makes a huge difference to
well, if it
David
does,
Patterson.
I think it may be politics, maybe smart politics. I think it's a real sorry statement. I really think it's the right thing to do. Let me turn to the issue of Christopher Cox, the SEC chairman on the Madoff scandal. Oh. This just into him. That Madoff was called a crook by a lot of folks over the last about 10 years, and specifically to the SEC. This SEC, I've said Cox ought to be fired long ago. What do you think?
Well, the SEC dropped the ball huge here. What about the accounting firms that the Madoff Corporation was supposed to be using? I mean, where were they? I mean, there's so many questions here. How does one guy even fill out all the forms?
Yeah, and what do you think?
Well, you start to look at them, apparently they look similar from year to year. So people had these really complex forms that looked like pretty much the same from year to year to year to year. And lots of people caught on, and lots of people tried to sound the warning.
That's called smoothing the yield, smoothing the results.
I don't know if Chris Cox has any press people, but he would be well advised to just lay low. That's a pot calling the kettle black, it seems to me.
All right, guys, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it.
You bet.
We'll be back in just a minute with some of your thoughts.